Uh, a few minutes to spare. I would like just to make two additional announcements. The first one, to avoid any surprises, the order of the following speakers that you can see in your booklet is a little different from what we proposed. So you can see actually, I imagine you took a time to take a look at what's published outside of the room. Anyway, there's a reshuffle in presentations. The second one, there was a last-minute addition of a very interesting presentation from James Lauer. He is from the Natural Resources Canada, and the title of his presentation will be Minerals and Metals in a Changing International Environment, a Canadian Perspective. That presentation, you don't see it either in the booklet. So just for you to be aware, and I hope you stick around for that presentation, which I'm sure is going to be very good. So our next speaker is Nils Voermann from Hatch. The title of his presentation is Managing Through Economic Cycles, an Engineering and Technology Perspective. Nils is a global managing director of technologies at Hatch, presently based in the Brisbane office in Australia. Nils graduated from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario in 1989 with a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering. Thereafter, he joined the engineering firm Hatch in Toronto. In 1994, he completed an MBA in SEAT in France. He led Hatch's furnace design group from 1995 to 2003, before being appointed to his present role as head of Hatch's Technologies business unit. In 2009, he started a temporary assignment to Hatch in Australia to provide leadership to the company's team in Australasia. Nils is a member of CIM and fellow of the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. Please, Nils, welcome.
Thanks, Daniel. Good afternoon, everybody. The title of my presentation, as you can see, is Managing Through Economic Cycles, an Engineering and Technology Perspective. So I'll talk about three main themes today, some more than others: cost reduction tactics, strategic options, and examples. So economic recessions, as I think we all know, are painful, but recessions are also opportunities. In a recession, opportunities that do not exist in boom times become available. This is true for metals producers, but it's also true for engineering and technology firms like Hatch as well. The normal reaction once a recession hits is to immediately cut costs in any way possible. Cutting costs in a commodity business is, of course, always desirable, as long as long-term profitability isn't compromised. But for firms sailing too close to the wind financially, that is with minimal cash or credit, cost cutting is an imperative during recession times. It's certainly necessary to cut costs in those cases to minimize cash outflow and stave off bankruptcy. And there are many tactics to reduce costs, some of which we heard about in previous sessions today. But that's not really the subject of my talk today. Rather, I'd like to discuss some strategic options that are enabled during recessionary times, along with a few thoughts on how to make use of those opportunities. First of all, some background. Recessions or negative GDP growth, the nadir of economic cycles, continue to be a fact of business life from time to time, as we all know. Recessions occur periodically, but unfortunately not totally predictably. Over the last 60 years, recessions have tended to occur rather regularly, once a decade or so. That is, in 2009, 2091, 1982, 1973, although I don't remember 1973 myself. This graph shows world GDP versus time from 1980 to the present. I think you can see a certain pattern. Recessions can be painful, as I mentioned, but they are like winter, a useful time to prepare for the inevitably following spring and summer. After every boom, there's a bust, but then another boom follows, at least eventually. Note, however, the double dip between 1998 and 2001 here. Hopefully, past performance is not a good indicator of the world economy's present performance in this particular case. Here you see the wild fluctuations in market value of mining and metals firms over the last few years. The green bars are the market capitalization of these firms in December 2007. The orange bars show each company's value in December 2008 at the trough of the recession, and the yellow bars are for August 2011. I think it's important to note that the major firms, including BHP Billiton, Vale, Rio Tinto, and others, lost 2/3 of their value before rebounding. Incredibly, they didn't go down by 1/3, but they went down to 1/3 of their former value. So that leads to the first opportunity in recessions, acquisitions. That's a rather obvious opportunity that presents itself based on the huge decrease in market capitalization and share price of companies during recessions. The only problem is access to cash when banks are less willing to lend, and also the natural instinct of potential acquirers is to conserve their cash in case the recession is longer and deeper than originally forecast. A recent example of this acquisition strategy in the depth of a recession was the plan by Chinalco to buy approximately 19 billion of Rio Tinto, which also equated to 15 or 20% of that company. And with the massive foreign exchange reserves of the Chinese state behind it, it certainly makes sense to seize such opportunities. Rio shares, in fact, might be a better investment than US dollars. Although that plan didn't go through, it certainly made sense for the acquirer, I believe. Here's a similar graph of market cap fluctuation for engineering firms that are publicly traded. These are very similar to the fluctuations we saw for mining and metals operating firms. These engineering firms, too, lost about 2/3 of their value on average between December 2007 and November 2008 before rebounding. So maybe Hatch should have bought one of our competitors. Another opportunity is to acquire strategic assets in the depth of a recession. The price of many assets decrease in recessions similar to the price of companies themselves. This presents an opportunity to acquire assets that are not as easily or cheaply available in more buoyant times. Examples are physical assets or equipment, junior miners, technology or patented processes, and last but not least, staff with key expertise that can help grow the business. Research and development is another opportunity that is much easier to staff when people are more available during recessions. For engineering companies, it's a good time to work on internal projects, like on technology development, work methods, calculation spreadsheets, or programs, standard procedures, and the like. Also, slow times are a good time to write technical papers. It's interesting to note that Hatch's production of technical papers is inversely proportional to GDP growth. The correlation is actually quite remarkable. One of the main opportunities I see in recessions is to economically increase capacity. This goes for both operating firms and engineering firms, so that the capacity is ready and available at the recession's end. Building production capacity in recessions has several advantages. First, lower project and equipment costs during recessions. Greenfield implementation durations are often equal to the duration of a recession, a couple of years at least, typically. And maintenance shutdowns are much more economically done during recessions because material and labor is cheaper, and most importantly, the opportunity cost of lost production during shutdowns is less when metal prices are low during a recession. Now on to a couple of examples. This is Cerro Matoso Line 2 in Colombia. In the midst of the recession starting in 1998, BHP Billiton embarked on an expansion of their Cerro Matoso ferronickel plant in Colombia, which originally had one rotary kiln electric furnace line. Expansion entailed adding a second dryer rotary kiln electric furnace to their existing single-line RKF plant. This picture shows line 2 under construction beside line 1. Here you have the original kiln 1, kiln 2 is here, furnace 1 is in this building here, and furnace 2 under construction is in here. The project, I think, was really a strategic masterstroke for several reasons. It was engineered and constructed during a recessionary time when input costs were at their lowest. The cost in 2011 dollars was about $350 million for an additional 25,000 tons per year of nickel in ferronickel, which is quite a bargain compared to greenfield nickel projects under construction today. But of course, expanding an existing facility meant there were minimal infrastructure costs, and also electrical power is off the grid instead of from a captive power plant. Economy of scale was achieved also in labor. Only about 15% extra staff were hired to run line 2. And third, timing was excellent, or at least lucky. After building at low cost during the recession, line 2 was ready just in time to take advantage of the subsequent decade-long rise in metals demand and prices. As you can see on this graph, line 2 was completed and it ramped up to full design production rate about 2001, which is right here, just in time to take advantage of rising nickel prices. Again, I'm not sure if that was predicted or was just luck, but in hindsight, I'm sure it was predicted. Here's a more recent example, also from Cerro Matoso. In 2009, Cerro Matoso engaged Hatch to rebuild and upgrade their Furnace 1, which had originally been built by others. Again, the timing was good with lower nickel prices. The opportunity cost of temporary lost production while the furnace was shut down was much less than it would have been in boom times. Also, the prices for material, equipment, and engineering were lower than in boom times. The upgraded furnace was commissioned a couple of months ago and is now running at the design production rate. We're just waiting for nickel prices to rise like they did last time. So in conclusion, recessions can be seen as an opportunity as well as a problem. The opportunities are to economically increase capacity, to take advantage of economies of scale, to perform R&D that typically we don't have time for in the boom times, to perform maintenance shutdowns with minimum opportunity cost of lost production and also lower input costs, and to make acquisitions at relatively bargain prices. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments for Nils? If not, then let's thank Nils for a very good presentation. Thanks, Nils. At this point, and just for the sake of catching up with the schedule in the booklet, I would like to propose a break, and we'll reconvene at 2:50. Thank you.